In this video, we'll be going over some of the Polyanalyst web report widgets. We'll start by going over what widgets are available in Polyanalyst. The widgets in Polyanalyst can be viewed as report enhancers. Here's a list of nearly all widgets, with the exception of some more specialized ones that we won't cover here. As we walk through some examples, you'll likely notice some overlapping functionality, but we'll be talking about the differentiators and main advantages of each of them. Let's start out by looking at a web report that doesn't have any widgets and start adding the first three from our list. For context, this report we're looking at is a dashboard that would show a compensation officer within an HR department how many of their employees are being paid under a standard wage set by the federal government for different job roles in different regions under the Service Contract Act. In a nutshell, contractors that want to provide services to government agencies must verify that they are paying certain job roles a standard wage. Otherwise, they can't bid and win government service contracts. This act keeps contractors from underbidding at the expense of their employees. The bar chart shows by state how much it would cost in annual wages to bring up all the employees in that state up to the standard. The total noncompliance proportion is identified in the pie chart on the right, and a list of the underpaid employees is at the bottom. So what we can do is bring in an image of the government database that holds all of these standard wages that the employees are being evaluated against. The image widget is extremely straightforward. It allows you to add one single image. It's mainly applied for the purposes of branding your reports, or like here, adding some contextual anchors to your reports to help remind your end users what this dashboard is all about. So what else might we need in this report? Well, we know that the government database we retrieved this data set from gets updated periodically. Perhaps it would help to verify that the data pulled from this external source is up to date. Let's see how adding a text widget can be used for this purpose. Here we are jumping ahead a bit and seeing the properties window of a text widget. So take a second to review the top toolbar because this will come up later. We see an image icon, font controls, a faded hyperlink symbol, and some alignment buttons. So even though this is a text widget, it can actually do much more than just annotate. It can hyperlink text and add images if we needed it to. Now back to our goal. We wanted to add text to our report to explicitly tell the end user what external data source is being pulled in and when it was last updated. So let's do that. SCA wage determinations, extracted from beta.sam.gov, last updated on November 1st, 2019. Now that we know the source and the last updated date, let's go one step further and add a hyperlink to the external data source so that we'll be able to do some independent verification. Once we're finished, we can click OK and see what it looks like in our report. Here's our report, and this is what it looks like when we add that text widget at the bottom. Now, so far, our report has had some good enhancements to add important information to the surface while not taking up too much real estate. The only drawback to this is that the text widget with the last updated date is static. It won't automatically update when new data is loaded from the database. Instead, we have to manually change the date. If, however, we would prefer to make the contents of this widget dynamic or pulling from a data set, we may want to instead consider changing out the text widget for a statistic widget. So we've now made that change. Since it's a bit hard to see, we'll zoom in on the stats widget that we just substituted. We notice a couple new things. First, we see the last updated date is colored to represent that this is an automatically updated field. Also, we see another dynamic field has been added: the number of SCA wage determinations extracted from the external data source. You've probably noticed that the first three widgets we've talked about so far are similar in a lot of ways. And due to some overlapping functionality, many users find that the statistics widget is the one they'll use most often because it's more versatile and comprehensive in its capabilities. The stats widget is also commonly used because it's often vital to improving the user experience and interpretability of a report. So far, we've added some footnote type information to this report that's not supposed to draw a lot of attention. However, most of the time, there are stats that we want to give a lot of attention to, such as these two stats widgets at the top here. Now, in our example here, the purpose of this report is to know if there are employee wages out of compliance and how much it's going to cost the company to make it right. And with the two stats widgets at the top here, this information is immediately communicated. We also see how many employees we're evaluating in this report out of the total. Understanding that only 1/5 of employees have been evaluated drastically changes the interpretation of the report we're viewing. Now, in terms of the statistics widget setup, the setup options are similar in many ways to the text widget. The main difference we see is in this option on the top left, which we can click to add or edit a statistic. We can then select which column and aggregation type we want to display, along with other customization options. Therefore, we can see that the statistic widget essentially pulls the same information that we could see by drilling down into any of the charts and viewing the statistics tab and distinct tab from the data table. The main advantage being that having the two widgets at the top tells the viewer right away what information is important and avoids the wasted time of some unnecessary clicks, distraction, and exploration. The next two widgets we'll be reviewing are the Navigator and Cards widgets. The Navigator widget, as the name implies, helps users navigate to different locations, and it comes in various forms and is quite customizable. Right now, we're seeing an entire sheet within a web report showcasing a couple of the forms this widget can take. In the blue box on the top left, this is a text based navigator where a user can click on any of the hyperlinked words and be taken to a different sheet within the report. There is also a link to an external website, to megaputer.com, near the Megaputer logo. To the right are four graphics to show how a navigator might also be displayed more visually. Just like for the first three widgets, the image files for the navigator can be in a variety of file formats, and you can even load small GIFs if you'd like. In addition to linking to other sheets in the same report, whether by hyperlinked text or by a graphic, the Navigator widget also has the ability to link to other reports that are built from completely different projects. Here is the Properties panel of the Navigator widget. Notice that it looks similar to both the Text and Stats widget's properties window. The difference here being that the Navigator widget has some additional options within the properties. For example, the top left button will automatically provide a listing of the hyperlinked report sheets, which we can use directly or modify. Additionally, when we indicate that we want to link to another report or report sheet, our options are a bit more extensive. For example, we can specify the link type in the first parameter. We can also choose whether the link should appear in a new browser window and then specify the specific link. So here is an example where we have chosen an internal report link type using a new window for opening the link, and we've specified the report name and sheet. In this way, the Navigator widget is the only widget that aids the bridging of two separate reports or helps the end user navigate more complex reports. Now let's wrap up this introduction with the Cards widget. Here's a section from a simple report that's about printer reviews. This report we can already filter by the brand of printers from the top. but we probably want to add the ability to filter by printer model as well. We could, of course, add another drop down or checkbox filter to this sheet, or instead, we can make the report more visually intuitive by adding the cards widget. So, first, let's move the brand filter to the left because it's always a good idea for the user experience to introduce filters you want them to apply from left to right in a logical order. So, they'll select brand first, and then let's add a cards widget with pictures of the printer models that can be used to further filter the charts on this report. So, here's a cards widget with the printer models. Now the user can click on one of the printers to see only the topics and sentiments for the selected model. Now the cards widgets are not limited to displaying images only. We can also choose to use the cards widget as an alternative method for featuring the text records from a data table. For example, we can choose to show the printer reviews on the cards instead of images. Sometimes this can be useful to remove all the clutter that comes with the data table and make it more intuitive so that users can select a specific text record and then filter the rest of the dashboard from there. Hopefully, the overview in the first part has highlighted which widgets are available, what they do, and how they can enhance the user experience of working with Polyanalyst web reports. Next, let's address the question, where are the widgets and where can we find them to add to our report? In the web report editor on the left of the interface, there is a button that opens the list of available widgets. You'll notice that the different types of filters are also found here. Pulling widgets into a web report from the Widgets subpanel is not affiliated with any particular dataset or imported node. We'll find the imported nodes are in a separate menu. In fact, only two of the widgets in here can actually utilize EDD or enhanced drill down. And those widgets are the statistics and cards widgets. The other widgets here don't require a dataset from the analytical client project. In fact, if there wasn't at least one dataset node imported to this web report, then the cards and stats widgets wouldn't even display. The other widgets can stand alone. They can import an image from your local drive or be given free text input and hyperlinks. There's another place we can find some widgets. If we went one button up on our menu, we would access the list of imported nodes. Then, under a dataset nodes dropdown, we see only two widgets. This is because these widgets are the only ones that can utilize enhanced drill down. Let's now go over some common settings between the widgets. Whenever a new web report component is added to a sheet, the report editor provides quick access on the left side of the interface for configuring its settings. For example, this is what the component settings panel would look like if we added a statistics widget. On the first submenu of most component settings is the general settings, which is represented by a gear icon. As you would expect, every widget and nearly all web report components share these general settings, which include the ability to provide a custom title to the widget and decide whether it should be visible, what font it should be in, and what size. For example, below is a cards widget that has been added to a report, and the bold title Cards is displayed. Now, the same goes for subtitles, which are displayed underneath the header and on top of the component background. And lastly, we can choose to apply a custom background color or not. Overall, the widget settings are very much like any other web report component. Another set of settings for the widgets, which we can find next to the gear icon options, are the text settings. The text settings are represented by an icon containing a T with a vertical bidirectional arrow. The text settings options are found within only three widgets that can accept free text input, those being the navigator widget, the text widget, and the statistics widget. Remember, the image widget is strictly a single image input. And the cards widget, although it can have text as you've seen, it actually receives that text input from columns within an associated dataset. Finally, let's wrap up with a quick summary of the widgets. Here's a comparison chart of the widgets based on four main features, with the first being about whether or not it can utilize enhanced drill down. As you can see, only the cards widget can do both, and the stats widget can only receive filters. Next is whether or not they display images and GIFs. We can see that all these widgets can, with the exception that the image widget can only handle one image. As far as linking, many of the widgets can link to external pages or reports or sheets, except for the image and cards widget. However, the navigator widget is the only one that specifically assists the user with linking to sheets within the report or linking to other reports. And of course, there is only one widget that can dynamically display stats and data values. That is the statistics widget, arguably the most versatile of the widgets. And this concludes our introduction to widgets in PolyAnalyst web reports. Thanks for watching.